Let's unpack this. We're plunging into a deep dive today that sits, well, right at the intersection of art, technology, and how we actually perceive the world. It's all filtered through the fascinating work of one artist, Kenji Kojima.
And what's compelling is how his journey, from medieval painting techniques, essentially, to manipulating binary code, it reveals some pretty profound ideas about art's fundamental nature today.
Yeah, definitely. The sources we're working with for this deep dive give us a really rich picture. We've got descriptions of his projects like the binary interpretation of the Arles period of Van Gogh and Gauguin.
Right.
His bitwise splitting and merging of pixels applied to everything from Lascaux cave paintings to Seurat, the Da Vinci Code project, plus insights from his own biography and, notes on his artistic process.
And these specific projects, they aren't just technical exercises, are they? They're really expressions of a core philosophy.
Yeah.
One that sees the world itself as, well, as data.
Exactly. Our mission here is to really understand his central argument, this idea that the world is essentially chaotic information.
That our senses are the specific keys we use to decode it. That all media in the 21st century is fundamentally binary, just zeros and ones, and what this kind of radical perspective means for art itself, its value, and how we understand perception in this digital age.
Yeah, it really pushes us beyond just, looking at digital images or videos. It asks us to rethink the very foundation of how we experience and create in a world that's just saturated with data.
So let's trace his path a bit.
Yeah.
It didn't start with screens and code, interestingly enough. Kenji Kojima, born in Japan, moved to New York City in 1980.
Right.
And for his first decade there, he was actually a painter, working in contemporary egg tempera.
Which is such a striking contrast, isn't it? Egg tempera. I mean, that's medieval materials and techniques, ground pigments, egg yolk.
Wow.
He was drawn to contemporary art, sure, but he apparently felt this discomfort with its excessive material value. That's how he put it.
Yeah.
So he went back to these really basic, almost ancient materials, sort of to understand the physical history of art making firsthand, He was really thinking about how art evolves, not just stylistically, but how it's fundamentally tied to society, to our minds, to the materials available, and, well, the tools we use.
And it wasn't like he was unsuccessful. His early work was collected by major institutions, Citibank, Hess Oil.
Right. But then as the personal computer began to just transform everything in the late 80s, early 90s, his perspective shifted dramatically.
Yeah, by the early 1990s, he pivoted completely to digital art.
And part of that shift, reading his notes, it seems there was this feeling of ecological guilt about the waste involved in physical painting.
Oh, interesting.
Working on a computer felt clean, he said, waste-free by comparison. It felt lighter, more aligned with a different future, maybe.
And this wasn't just about using Photoshop or something. He actually taught himself programming.
Right.
Which eventually led him to develop his own software, RGB Music Lab, back in 2007. And this was crucial, really, because it let him directly explore the image-music relationship. That became a cornerstone for him later.
He initially pictured creating, interactive software art, stuff people could play with themselves.
Yeah, but then he ran smack into that perennial problem of the digital age.
Oh, yeah.
Software compatibility issues,
Yeah.
Operating systems changing constantly.
Yeah.
It's a very practical obstacle.
Right, it happens all the time. So he adapted. Instead of trying to sell the software, he started making video works of the software in action.
A smart pivot.
Yeah, and it allowed his work to actually be shown internationally at media art festivals and such.
And he kept adapting, even post-COVID, when, maybe physical filming or access was difficult. He launched his musical interpretation of painting series using online archives of classical images, transforming them into musical pieces.
So you see this consistent thread, right? Taking visual sources and reinterpreting them, often musically, always through a digital process.
Definitely. Which brings us, I think, to the heart of his artistic philosophy. What is he really trying to say about the world itself?
Okay, yeah. Let's get into that.
Well, his central premise seems to be that the reality we inhabit is fundamentally just a stream of chaotic information. It's overwhelming, kind of formless data until something acts upon it.
And that something is us, our senses.
Exactly. He argues that our sensory organs, eyes, ears, they aren't just passive receivers of raw data, they're active filters. They select and extract specific components like the visual spectrum or auditory frequencies from this underlying chaos.
He uses this great metaphor, like We construct our perceived world using the key of a sense organ, almost like using a specific algorithm to decipher a code.
Right. Now, here's where the 21st century really clicks into place for him. The fundamental shared material across all media today, visual images, sound recordings, text, everything's all binary data.
Zeros and ones.
Ultimately, yeah. It's all stored and transmitted as sequences of zeros and ones.
So that binary stream is the chaotic information he's talking about.
Precisely. And this fact that the world's media is built on this binary foundation. That's why he works directly with manipulating color pixels and other data using techniques like bitwise operations. Binary is the fundamental material of our time for him.
Just like pigment and egg yolk were before.
Exactly. Or clay for a sculptor. It's the stuff you work with.
So let's talk about those techniques. His bitwise splitting and merging of pixels project sounds fascinating. He said this was partly inspired by, well, the challenge of how artists create something new when generative AI is getting so good at just assembling past data.
Right. He wants to work with data that AI cannot easily collect or mimic. Something fundamental.
Which led him to cryptography, a one-time pad.
Yeah, the concept, anyway.
Yep.
One-time pad. Sounds very digital security, doesn't it?
It does.
Conceptually, it is. What he does is take the color data of an image, which is just binary numbers representing red, green, blue values, and performs a bitwise XOR operator.
XOR. Okay.
Yeah, he combines it with a set of randomly generated binary numbers.
So he's basically mixing the image's binary code with random binary noise.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
The XOR operation, it works bit by bit. It takes two inputs, a bit from the image, a bit from the random number, and spits out a single bit based on whether they're the same or different.
Okay.
What this does mathematically is split the original image data into two distinct components. You get the result of the XOR operation, which looks like total chaos, just a random mosaic of colors.
Right, the scrambled image.
That's the cipher or the code, and then you have the random numbers themselves, which act as the key.
And visually, you see this completely scrambled, chaotic mosaic. Doesn't look like the original at all.
Not even close. But the magic, and this mirrors his whole philosophy about senses being keys, is in the decoding. If you take that chaotic mosaic data and you perform the exact same bitwise XOR operation again, but this time using the original set of random numbers, the key,
the original image comes back.
Perfectly reconstructed, yeah.
Wow. And the Lascaux project video you mentioned, that demonstrates this.
Powerfully, yeah. You start with this vibrant, chaotic mess of color blocks. And then as the key, the random numbers is applied, it resolves. You see the familiar lines and shapes of the ancient cave painting emerge from the noise.
So it visualizes his idea perfectly. Order being extracted from chaos, but only if you have the right key or filter.
Exactly.
He also mentioned George's Seurat, pointillism. How does that fit in?
Yeah, he sees an analogy there. Seurat's technique, wasn't about mixing paint physically on the palette. He put dots of pure color side by side on the canvas.
Right, and your eye does the mixing.
Exactly. Your eye optically mixes them at a distance. Kojima sees his digital merging of these two binary color elements, the cipher and the key, as a similar kind of process. The digital operation, like the viewer's eye in Seurat's case, creates the perceived final image from distinct components.
Okay, that makes sense. So this binary manipulation, it's not just visual, right? You mentioned his work bridges into sound, connecting back to that RGB Music Lab software.
Absolutely. He believes visual and auditory information, even though they feel so different to our senses, they share that common digital foundation. They're both just binary code underneath.
He's kind of following in the footsteps of artists like Scriabin and Kandinsky, people who explored synesthesia, that connection between color and music.
Definitely drawing on that tradition, but his approach is very specific, very data-driven. He converts the binary colored data from images directly into musical scales using his own RGB music method.
Okay, how does that translation actually work? How do you get from a color value, like an RGB number, to a musical note?
Well, in his system, he basically sets the center of the RGB value range to correspond to middle C on the piano.
Oh, okay.
And from there, specific color values get mapped systematically to the 12-tone chromatic scale. So different colors literally mathematically correspond to different notes.
That's wild. So in that Lascaux video, when we hear the piano ocarina bells, that's actually generated directly from the colors in the cave painting.
Exactly. He apparently randomly samples RGB values from 5 different spots within the Lascaux image. Those numerical color values are fed into his RGB music system, converted into notes, and then assigned to those instruments. You are, in a very real sense, hearing the binary color data of a prehistoric painting.
Huh. He did mention a technical point about the amount of data needed for the mosaic versus the music.
Yeah, just a practical note. While a true cryptographic one-time pad needs exactly equal amounts of data for the cipher and the key,
Right.
for his videos, generating music data just takes longer. So to make it work visually, he uses twice as much mosaic color data to generate shorter musical segments that fit the video's pacing. The core concept is the same, though. Converting binary data from one form, visual color, to another, auditory music, is the artwork.
And he applies these pretty radical ideas to some of art history's most recognizable images.
Oh, yeah. His binary interpretation of Van Gogh and Gauguin project is a prime example. It focuses specifically on that intense period when they were together in Arles.
That famous fraught collaboration.
Right. Intense collaboration, but also friction, differing temperaments, ultimately leading to the famous ear incident.
And the paintings he uses are central to that story, aren't they? Van Gogh's self-portrait, the sunflowers, Gauguin's painting of Van Gogh painting sunflowers. There are portraits of locals like Madame Roulin, Madame Genou.
Iconic 19th century works.
Right.
And he takes them, decomposes them digitally into these tiny color particles, rearranges them randomly, and then layers on these deliberate digital glitches, visual noise derived from overlays of random binary data.
And the sound is happening at the same time, generated from the colors.
Generated simultaneously from the color data, yeah.
The resulting videos, there's an 8.5-minute compilation, and shorter pieces like the one on the self-portrait with bandaged ear, they create this strange bridge, don't they, between the physical, tactile world of late 19th century painting and this intangible, data-driven world of 21st century digital art.
Absolutely. And thinking about it now, in 2025, especially with generative AI constantly remixing existing visuals, this work raises really profound questions about visual memory, originality, authorship. By deliberately glitching and randomizing these famous, almost sacred images, he challenges our assumption that the truth of the artwork lies just in its fixed original form. The manipulation, the binary process itself, becomes the subject.
And he doesn't stop there. He extends these concepts to other masters, too. There's a Da Vinci Code project doing similar encryption, decryption, and music conversion with Leonardo's portraits.
The Mona Lisa, Ginevra da Benci, Lady with an Ermine.
And the bitwise splitting technique applied to Surratt's La Grande Jatte.
It really shows that his philosophical framework and his technical approach, they aren't tied to one specific era or style. They're applicable to any image, basically, once it's digitized, once it becomes binary data.
Now, alongside all these technical and philosophical ideas, Kojima holds some very, very strong views on the current state of the art market.
He's quite direct about it, doesn't mince words. He states plainly, based on his view, that NFT art is not art, but a financial product.
Wow. That's a bold statement, especially given all the hype around NFTs recently. How does he justify that?
His core argument hinges on what he sees as the greatest feature of digital art. It's unlimited reproducibility.
Okay.
It can be copied perfectly, infinitely, at basically zero cost.
Whereas in the traditional art market,
The entire system of value is built on uniqueness, on scarcity. If you could copy, say, the Mona Lisa infinitely and perfectly, its immense monetary value based on it being the unique object would just evaporate.
right, it would be worthless in market terms.
So he sees the NFT focus on creating unique digital tokens as just an attempt to graft artificial scarcity onto something that is inherently reproducible, purely for financial speculation, in his view.
So he's trying to cut through all that to find a different meaning for art outside of what he calls this abnormal financial situation embedded in capitalism.
Exactly. He wants to restore art to what he sees as a normal, respectable value, something based on its connection with the viewer, its aesthetic impact, its conceptual weight, rather than just its price tag.
He even links what he sees as the greedy materialism of modernity, this obsession with uniqueness and money worship in art. He links that to environmental problems.
Yeah, it's all connected for him. He believes art needs this kind of fundamental reform, maybe to help lead society towards a new aesthetic value system.
And this is where his most maybe striking statement about 21st century art comes in. He says art isn't about what to paint or create or possess anymore, but about expressing the direction in which the medium is heading.
So the artistic act itself becomes about exploring the fundamental nature and potential of the digital medium, working with binary, exploring its transformations, understanding how it shapes our perception.
That seems to be it. And his practical policy reflects this anti-market stance completely. His videos, they're free to share, free to download, no permission needed. Yeah, Donations are optional. And he even says, donate only if you want, even if you look at them and think they have no artistic value.
Wow. That completely upends the whole idea that art's worth is tied to ownership or a price tag.
Mm-hmm.
The value, if there is any, is purely in the experience or the idea itself, not the object, digital or otherwise.
So, bringing this back around to you, listening to this deep dive, what does this all mean?
Yeah. How does this perspective, the world as chaotic data, our senses as keys decoding it, how does that resonate with your own experience, especially with, information overload today?
And if you accept the premise, even just for a moment, that all the digital media you consume daily, every image on your phone, every song you stream, every video is fundamentally just zeros and ones, does that change how you think about what you're actually seeing and hearing?
And what about the implications of digital art's unlimited reproducibility? How does that affect how you think about ownership or what makes something valuable or even what creativity is, especially now algorithms can manipulate data streams so fluidly?
How do these projects, the ones that take iconic masterpieces and deliberately decompose them or glitch them using code, how do they challenge your own comfort zone with ideas of truth or originality or maybe the sacredness of an artwork in this age of constant digital manipulation and AI?
Kojima's work, it really uses technology in art history almost like a mirror, holding it up to our own digital reality and our place within it.
So we've explored Kenji Kojima's unique vision today, using technology to break down classic art into its binary core, bridging sight and sound, and fiercely questioning traditional ideas of value and authorship in the digital age.
He really challenges us, doesn't he, to look past the surface image or the market price and see art instead as maybe an expression of the medium's own trajectory, especially as everything converges into that fundamental binary stream.
From ancient cave paintings to Van Gogh, Gauguin, Da Vinci, he filters history through the surprising lens of cryptography, bitwise operations, music theory, compelling us to consider our own senses as these powerful yet maybe limited decoders of a world just awash in chaotic data.
Yeah, this deep dive has really given us a glimpse into one artist's provocative, very data-driven perspective on creativity and perception here in the 21st century.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting, maybe a final thought to chew on. If the world is fundamentally binary data, and our senses are just specific keys that decode that data into what we experience as sight and sound, what other kinds of keys could possibly exist? Or maybe, what other keys could we invent that might allow us to perceive the world in ways we can't even begin to imagine right now?